He spent one night with a feathered alien girl, and she laid a massive egg a month later. Wayne McNabb adjusted the high-tech compound bow slung across his back as he made his way through the dense forest of New Eden Colony. The morning dew still clung to the alien vegetation, creating a mystical atmosphere in the early dawn light. As the colony's chief hunter, he had a reputation to uphold, and the settlement's food stores needed replenishing. At 32, Wayne cut an impressive figure in his combat armor. His short brown beard and mustache were neatly trimmed, and his keen eyes constantly scanned the surroundings for both prey and potential threats. New Eden might have been humanity's most successful extrasolar colony, but that didn't mean it was without danger. "Another day in paradise," he muttered, checking his quiver of smart arrows. Each contained a miniature guidance system and could be programmed for various hunting scenarios. It was a perfect blend of traditional skill and modern technology, just the way he liked it. The sound of rustling leaves caught his attention. Something was moving through the underbrush about 50 meters ahead. Wayne silently nocked an arrow and activated his helmet's thermal imaging. What he saw made him freeze. The heat signature was unlike anything he'd encountered before. Humanoid, but with distinct avian characteristics. As the figure emerged into a clearing, Wayne's jaw dropped. It was her, the mysterious female who had visited his tent a month ago during that unforgettable night. She stood there in her revealing black bodysuit, her gray and yellow feathers gleaming in the morning light. Her slender figure was both alien and alluring, with human-like limbs covered in fine down. "Hello, Wayne," she said in accented English, her voice musical and slightly trilling. "I believe we need to talk." Wayne lowered his bow, his heart racing. "You can speak?" She laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a breeze. "Of course I can. I just chose not to during our previous encounter." She stepped closer, carrying something large wrapped in shimmering cloth. "I have something to show you." With graceful movements, she unwrapped the bundle, revealing an egg nearly the size of a human head. Its surface was iridescent, shifting between shades of blue and gold. "Congratulations," she said with a mischievous smile. "You're going to be a father." Wayne staggered backward, his mind reeling. That's impossible. We're different species." "Our people are called the Avari," she interrupted. I am Noria, and we are more compatible with humans than you might think. My body adapted to make this possible." She stroked the egg gently. "In our culture, the male protects the egg until it hatches. You are strong, capable, and I choose you." Wayne ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this revelation. Hander. "Let me get this straight. You sneak into my tent, captivate me without saying a word, disappear for a month, and now you show up with our egg." Noria's feathers ruffled slightly in what seemed like amusement. "When you put it that way, it does sound rather dramatic." Her expression grew serious. "But there's more you need to know. I'm not just any Avari. I'm a scout commander. We've been observing your colony for months." "Watching us? Why?" "Because humanity fascinates us." She stepped closer, her exotic eyes meeting his. "Your species has achieved so much in such a short time. From primitive tools to interstellar travel in mere millennia. You're resilient, adaptable, and surprisingly compatible with us genetically." Wayne glanced at the egg. "And this was what? Some kind of experiment?" "No," Noria said firmly. "This was choice. My choice. Among my people, females choose their mates based on strength, courage, and character. I've watched you hunt, seeing how you protect the colony. You are perfect." Before Wayne could respond, his calm crackled to life. "McNabb, we've got incoming bogies. Multiple ships just dropped out of hyperspace." Noria's head snapped up, her feathers bristling. "The Dronid. They followed me." She thrust the egg into Wayne's arms. "You must protect it. They're here to claim your colony." "What? Who are the Dronid?" "Ruthless conquerors. They subject every civilization they encounter. Strip mining planets and enslaving populations. They've been pursuing our scout ships for months, using us to find viable colonies." She pulled out a sleek weapon from her bodysuit. "If they take this world, everyone here becomes their property." The sky above the forest began to rumble with the sound of approaching ships. Wayne cradled the iridescent egg carefully as he and Noria sprinted through the forest toward the colony, Her feathers bristled with each distant explosion that lit up the morning sky, her warrior instincts clearly on high alert. "The egg's shell is incredibly resilient," Noria assured him, noticing his protective grip. "It can withstand significant impact. Our species evolved on a high-gravity world with frequent meteor showers." "That's reassuring," Wayne replied, vaulting over a fallen log, "though I'd rather not test its durability." He couldn't help but marvel at how natural it felt running alongside this alien woman who had so thoroughly upended his life. "So, about that night," Noria's melodious laugh carried over the sound of their footfalls. "You're thinking about that now while we're running from an invasion?" "Well, it did result in this rather impressive egg." He gestured with his chin. "And I have questions about Avari biology." "Later," she promised, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "though I must say your performance exceeded all my research on human capabilities." Before Wayne could respond, they broke through the tree line. The colony's defensive wall loomed before them, its shield generators humming to life. Colonial Defense Force troops were already manning the ramparts, their pulse rifles trained on the sky. "Commander McNabb!" Captain Chesler's voice boomed from above. "Get your ass up here. We've got multiple bogies incoming." "Open the gate!" Wayne shouted. "And I'm bringing a friend with intel on the hostiles." The massive gates ground open, revealing the organized chaos within. Civilians were being evacuated to the underground shelters, while defense forces mobilized. Wayne led Noria straight to the command center, where Colonel Harrison was coordinating the response. "Sir," Wayne began, "this is Scout Commander Noria of the Avari. She has crucial information about our attackers." Harrison's eyes widened at Noria's appearance, then narrowed at the egg in Wayne's arms, but he remained professional. "Talk fast, Commander. We've got incoming in less than 10 minutes. Noria stepped forward, her bearing every inch a military officer. The Drawnid use a 3-wave attack strategy. First wave, atmospheric fighters to test defenses. Second, drop ships targeting power infrastructure. Third, ground forces deployed while their capital ships provide orbital support." She pulled out a small device that projected a holographic display of Drawnid ship configurations. "Their fighters are heavily armored but have a weak point here." She pointed to a section near the engines. "Their pilots rely on cybernetic enhancement for targeting, which makes them vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies. We can reconfigure our shield generators to emit those frequencies," Wayne suggested, his mind racing. Create a disruption field around the colony." "Clever," Noria purred, her feathers ruffling appreciatively. "This is why I chose you." Harrison cleared his throat. "Focus, people. Bariatures. Commander Noria, what's their ground force composition?" "Primarily mechanized infantry with bio-augmented shock troops. She was cut off by the shriek of incoming fighters. "Multiple contacts!" Chesler's voice crackled over the comm. "At least 30 fighters on approach." Harrison turned to Wayne McNabb. "Get to the north wall. Your bow and smart arrows might be our best shot at exploiting those weak points." He looked at Noria. "Commander, I need you coordinating with our tactical team." "The AR," Wayne started, but Noria was already reaching for it. "I'll keep it safe in the command center," she said softly. "Just come back to us." Her hand lingered on his arm, her touch sending electricity through him despite the urgency of the situation. Wayne nodded, then sprinted for the armory. He needed specialized arrows for this fight. Behind him, he heard Noria calling out Drawnid tactical patterns to the defense coordinators. In the armory, he quickly loaded his quiver with EMP-tipped arrows and grabbed additional power cells. The colony's warning sirens were blaring now, and he could hear the distinctive whine of Drawnid engines growing closer. "McNabb!" It was Chesler on his comm again. "We've got civilians still evacuating in Sector 7. The Drawnid fighters are going to reach them before they make it to the shelters." "On my way!" Wayne replied, running for the north wall. He took the stairs 3 at a time, emerging onto the ramparts just as the first wave of fighters screamed overhead. The sleek, predatory ships were darker than space itself, their hulls seeming to absorb light. Wayne nocked an arrow, his bow's targeting system linking with his neural interface. The world slowed down as combat enhancement protocols kicked in. "You know," he muttered to himself, "when I woke up this morning, I didn't expect to be fighting an alien invasion force while protecting my hybrid egg." He let the arrow fly, watching with satisfaction as it struck a fighter's weak point, causing it to spiral into another ship. Bet you didn't expect to be a father either, Chesler quipped, firing his pulse rifle from a nearby position. The night she showed up in my tent was memorable, Wayne admitted, taking down another fighter. Though I wish she'd mentioned the whole elastic biology thing beforehand. Less talking, more shooting, Harrison barked over the comm. Naira says we've got dropships incoming, Wayne grinned. Despite the situation, the woman who turned his world upside down was now helping save his colony, and somewhere in the command center was physical proof of their impossible connection. He knocked another arrow. Well, hey, he said to no one in particular. At least our kid will have one hell of a story about how their parents got together. The Dropsnid ground forces hit harder than anyone expected. Their massive assault vehicles crashed through the colony's outer defensive line like it was made of paper, disgorging waves of bio-augmented troops. Wayne watched from his position as the sleek, insectoid warriors poured through the breach, their armor gleaming with an unsettling organic sheen. Fall back to secondary positions, Harrison's voice crackled over the comm. Protect the civilian evacuation routes. Wayne was already moving, his boots pounding against the metal walkway below. He could see a group of civilians, mostly scientists from the agricultural division, trapped between two advancing Dropnid squadrons. Naira, he called into his comm. I've got civilians pinned down in Sector 7. What's the status on the command center? Compromised, she replied, her voice tight with tension. The egg is secure, but we're relocating to the underground bunker. I'm coming to you. These people will need both of us. The great hunter and his feathered mate fighting side by side. Chester's voice cut in, followed by the sound of heavy weapons fire. Just like one of those ancient Earth romance novels. Less commentary, more covering fire, Wayne growled, though he couldn't help but smile. He reached the ground level just as Naira emerged from a side corridor, her black bodysuit now supplemented with lightweight combat armor that somehow managed to accommodate her feathers. Nice outfit, he quipped, noticing how the armor highlighted rather than concealed her unique features. Your human armor required some modifications, she smiled, her feathers rippling in what he was learning to recognize as amusement, though I kept the original design's more appealing elements. A massive explosion rocked the ground, cutting off their banter. Through the smoke, they could see the trapped civilians huddling behind an overturned transport, while Dropsnid troops advanced from both directions. Their armor is weakest at the joints, Naira said, drawing her exotic weapon. And they're not used to fighting opponents who can think creatively. Good thing you picked a creative mate then, Wayne replied, nocking an arrow. How do you feel about playing bait? Naira's feathers flared in what could only be described as predatory excitement. I knew there was a reason I chose you. She touched his arm briefly, her fingers trailing along his armor. Just remember, you have responsibilities now. Our egg needs its father and its mother, he added firmly, earning a pleased trill from her. They moved in perfect sync, as if they'd trained together for years, instead of meeting under rather intimate circumstances just a month ago. Naira darted into the open, her feathers catching the light in a dazzling display that immediately drew the Drasnid's attention. Their cybernetic targeting systems locked onto her, just as she'd predicted. Wayne's arrows found their marks in the milliseconds, when the enemy troops adjusted their stance to track Naira's acrobatic movements. One by one, the bio-augmented warriors fell, their armor failing at precisely the points Naira had identified. The path to the east is clear, Wayne called to the civilians. Move now. The scientists didn't need to be told twice. They broke cover, running for the safety of the underground shelters. Naira covered their retreat, her weapon emitting pulses that somehow bypassed the Drasnid shields completely. Impressive weapon, Wayne commented as they fell back alongside the civilians. A gift from my mother, Naira replied. She said I needed to court a worthy mate. She glanced at him sideways, though I don't think this is quite what she had in mind. I'd love to meet her someday, Wayne said, then ducked as a Drasnid energy blast sizzled overhead, assuming we survive this. Oh, you'll meet her. Naira's tone was both amused and slightly worried. She's quite eager to meet the human who managed to catch her daughter's eye and help create her first grandchild. Before Wayne could respond to that intriguing and slightly terrifying prospect, a massive Drasnid war machine rounded the corner ahead of them. It looked like a cross between a tank and an insect, its weapons already charging. Get the civilians to the bunker, Wayne said, reaching for his specialized arrows. I'll handle this. Together, Noria corrected him, her feathers bristling with determination. I didn't choose you as my mate to watch you fight alone. The war machine's main cannon began to glow, and Wayne felt a surge of admiration for the fierce, beautiful alien who had quite literally dropped into his life. You know, when you showed up in my tent that night, I never imagined it would lead to this. Really? Noria's weapon hummed as she took aim. I thought humans were supposed to be romantic, fighting alongside your mate, protecting your offspring, facing impossible odds. She flashed him a smile that somehow managed to be both predatory and affectionate. By AAR standards, this is a perfect courtship. The war machine fired, and they dove in opposite directions. Wayne rolled to his feet, already loosing arrows at the vehicle's sensor arrays, while Noria's weapon targeted its locomotion systems. They moved in perfect harmony, as if their night together had created more than just an egg. It had forged a connection that translated seamlessly into combat. If this is courtship, Wayne called out as they systematically dismantled the war machine, what's marriage like? Noria's answering laugh was interrupted by the sound of more Drawnid troops approaching. Survive this, protect our egg, and you'll find out. The remaining civilians had almost reached the bunker entrance when another explosion rocked the colony. This one was different. It came from below, sending tremors through the ground that made Wayne's teeth rattle. They're tunneling! Noria's feathers stood on end. The Drawnid are using their burrower units. They're trying to get under the bunker. Wayne swore color, earning an appreciative glance from Noria. The command center's inner vault was designed to withstand orbital bombardment. But these people... She gestured to the civilians. We need to get them to the secondary shelter in the hydroponics bay, Wayne decided. Chesler, do you copy? We need cover fire at Junction 4. Little busy. Chesler's voice was barely audible over weapons fire. Got my own problems with these oversized bugs? Noria touched Wayne's arm, her fingers sending a familiar warmth through him despite the situation. I have an idea, but you're going to think it's crazy. Crazier than a feathered alien scout choosing a human mate and laying an egg the size of a basketball? Her feathers rippled with amusement. Point taken. The Droskinid's cybernetic systems are vulnerable to certain bioelectric frequencies. My people evolved to generate such frequencies as a defense mechanism and, during our night together, I may have transferred some of that capability to you temporarily through intimate contact. Wayne stared at her. You're telling me that our passionate encounter gave me alien powers? More like enhanced your existing bioelectric field to match Avari frequencies, she corrected, looking slightly embarrassed. It's how my people ensure genetic compatibility with chosen mates. The effect should still be active, given how recent our encounter was. Another explosion rocked the corridor. The civilians huddled closer together, looking terrified. Right, Wayne said, processing this new information. And how exactly do I use this temporary alien power that I got from our night of passion? Noria's feathers fluttered in what he was beginning to recognize as her equivalent of a blush. Remember how you felt in that moment of, peak connection? Channel that energy. My presence should help amplify it. This is officially the strangest combat situation I've ever been in, Wayne muttered. But he closed his eyes, remembering that night, the way Noria had seemed to glow. The electric sensation that had coursed through him at her touch. He felt it now, a subtle vibration just under his skin. Noria pressed close to him, her feathers brushing his armor, and the sensation intensified. Now! She commanded. Wayne released the energy, just as the first wave of Draznid troops rounded the corner. The effect was spectacular. The cybernetic warriors seized up, their augmentation shorting out in cascading waves of failure. Holy, he breathed. That actually worked. Of course it did, Noria sounded smugly pleased. I chose you for many reasons, Wayne McNabb. Your potential for bioelectric compatibility was just one of them. They quickly led the civilians past the disabled Drawnid troops. Wayne couldn't help but notice how Noria stayed close to him, their temporary bond humming between them like a live wire. So, he said as they approached the hydroponics bay, any other surprising abilities I should know about from our encounter? Many, she replied with a sultry trill, but perhaps we should focus on surviving this invasion before we explore them further. Agreed. Or he paused, then added, though I look forward to that exploration. Noria's answering smile was both fierce and tender. As do I, my chosen mate. As the hydroponics bay doors sealed behind them, Wayne took a moment to study the woman, the alien who had so thoroughly upended his life. Her feathers gleamed under the artificial lights, her warrior stance perfectly balanced between grace and lethality. And somewhere in the command center vault, their impossible egg waited, proof that the universe had more surprises in store than he'd ever imagined. "You know," he said as they prepared to defend their position, "most humans just go on a few dates before starting a family." Noria's laugh echoed through the bay. "Where's the fun in that?" The hydroponics bay erupted in chaos as the facility's emergency lighting bathed everything in a pulsing amber glow. Wayne was about to coordinate their next defensive move when a new sound cut through the chaos, a high-pitched resonance that made his teeth vibrate. "Those are HFY War songs!" Noria's feathers flared with excitement. "My people have arrived." Through the bay's transparent ceiling panels, they could see massive ships descending through New Eden's atmosphere. Unlike the dark, Catino vessels of the Dronid, these ships gleamed like polished mother-of-pearl, their hulls adorned with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living feathers. "That's the Sovereign Nest," Noria explained, her voice filled with pride. "My mother's flagship," Wayne swallowed hard. "Your mother commands the fleet?" "Oh, did I forget to mention that?" Noria's eyes sparkled with mischief. "High Marshal Naira of the Celestial Plume is quite interested in meeting the human who captured her daughter's heart and helped create her first grandchild." Before Wayne could process the implications of having inadvertently mated with the daughter of an alien military leader, the comm system crackled to life. "This is High Marshal Naira to New Eden Colony. We've detected Dronid signatures and are moving to engage. Please coordinate your ground forces with our landing parties." There was a pause. "And Noria, dear, your mate better be as impressive as your report suggests." Chesler's laughter erupted over the comm. "Oh, this is better than those soap operas my grandmother watches." "Focus on the battle," Wayne growled, though he couldn't help but smile. "How do we coordinate with your people, Noria?" She was already moving, her bodysuit's built-in systems interfacing with the colony network. "The Avari excel at aerial combat. We'll drive the Dronid into killing zones while your ground forces." The ceiling above them shattered as an Avari drop pod crashed through, landing with precision in the center of the bay. The pod's petals unfolded like a blooming flower, revealing a squad of Avari warriors. Their armor was similar to Noria's but more elaborate. With ceremonial feathers worked into the design, the squad leader stepped forward, her golden feathers marking her as a veteran warrior. She took one look at Wayne, then broke into a wide grin. "So this is the human who managed to woo our little scout." She clapped Wayne on the shoulder with surprising strength. "I'm Wing Commander Talia. We've heard all about your nocturnal encounter." Wayne felt his face heat up. "Word travels fast in space, I see." "Oh, you have no idea," Talia laughed. "This parrot. The first human-Avari coupling in history resulting in a viable egg and with one of our most promising scouts. The entire fleet has been buzzing with speculation about you." "Talia," Noria interrupted, her feathers slightly ruffled. "Perhaps we could focus on the invasion?" Of course, of course." Talia's expression turned professional, though her eyes still twinkled with amusement. "Though I must say, your choice is obvious. Any warrior who can take down Dronid fighters with primitive projectile weapons has earned his nest." More Avari drop pods were landing throughout the colony now, their warriors coordinating seamlessly with the human defenders. Wayne watched in amazement as they took to the air, their armor's anti-gravity systems allowing them to fight in 3 dimensions. "Your people seem very accepting of us," Wayne noted as they moved to secure the perimeter. Noria's hand found his, squeezing gently. "The Avari value strength, adaptability, and the courage to embrace the unknown. Humans embody all these traits. Besides," she added with a sultry trill, "after that night, how could I possibly choose anyone else?" "Speaking of choices," Talia called, as she effortlessly dispatched a Dronid warrior with a spinning kick. "Wait until you see what the High Marshal has planned for your official nest-binding ceremony." "Or what?" Wayne nearly missed his next shot. "Oh yes," Talia continued, clearly enjoying herself. "You day. You didn't think you could create an egg with a High Marshal's daughter without some formal recognition, did you? The ceremony is usually quite spectacular. Aerial displays, ritual combat demonstrations, the traditional feather binding." "Talia!" No. Noria's feathers were fully fluffed now, either from embarrassment or annoyance. "He doesn't need to know all this yet. On the contrary." A new voice cut in over their comms. High Marshal Navaria's tone was rich with amusement. As the mother of the bride, I believe I have every right to ensure proper traditions are observed, even if the groom is unconventional. Wayne watched as a particularly large Droznid war machine was systematically dismantled by coordinated Avari strikes. Ma'am, with all due respect, perhaps we could discuss wedding plans after we've dealt with the invasion? Practical and focused, Navaria approved. Though, Noria, your taste has improved since that incident with the Centaurian ambassador's son. Mother! Wayne filed that intriguing comment away for later. As they pressed their advantage, the Droznid forces were clearly unprepared for the combination of Avari aerial superiority and human ground tactics. Their rigid, cybernetically enhanced combat protocols couldn't adapt fast enough to the unpredictable partnership. You know, Wayne said as he and Noria fought back to back, her feathers occasionally brushing against him in a way that brought back very pleasant memories. When you showed up in my tent that night, a part of me thought I was dreaming. Really? Noria's weapon pulsed, taking down 3 Droznid troops. What gave it away? The feathers? The silence? The way I... Perhaps save the intimate details for after the battle, Talia suggested, swooping past them, though I must say, your technique for selecting a mate is admirably direct. Noria! More Avari ships were arriving, their weapon systems making short work of the Droznid fleet on the ground. The combination of human determination and Avari grace was proving unstoppable. The enemy is retreating! High Marshal Navaria announced. All forces, press the advantage. And Wayne? Yes, ma'am. Once this is over, we should discuss how you intend to provide for my daughter and grandchild. I understand humans don't typically build nests in the traditional sense. Chester's voice cut in again. Oh, man! Wait until the Colony Council hears about this. Our best hunter is going to have an alien mother-in-law who commands a battle fleet. Focus on the fight, Wayne muttered. Though he couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, in the middle of an alien invasion, discussing wedding plans with his future mother-in-law, while defending a colony alongside his feathered mate who had laid their egg after one passionate night together. And somehow, it felt absolutely right. I can hear you thinking, Noria said softly as they advanced down a corridor, having second thoughts about getting involved with an alien warrior princess. Wayne pulled her close, not caring that they had an audience of highly amused Avari warriors. Never. Though you might have mentioned the princess part earlier. I'm not actually a princess, she corrected. The High Marshal is an earned position, not inherited. This day. Though Mother does tend to act rather regal. I heard that, daughter dear. Navaria's voice came through crystal clear. And Wayne, I look forward to showing you the traditional Avari courtship rituals. Since you've experienced the abbreviated version, you might find the full ceremony enlightening. As if to punctuate her words, another wave of Droznid forces broke against their lines, only to be scattered by the combined might of human ingenuity and Avari aerial combat prowess. Wayne watched as Noria moved through the battle with lethal grace, her feathers catching the light in ways that reminded him of that memorable night. You know what? He said, taking down a Droznid warrior with a perfectly placed arrow. I can't wait! The battle shifted to the colony's outskirts as the Droznid forces retreated through the chaos. Wayne caught glimpses of the Avari fleet performing maneuvers that seemed to defy physics, their ships moving with the same fluid grace as their pilots. Your people are incredible, he told Noria as they secured another sector. Though I have to ask, why didn't you just call them for help when you first arrived? Noria's feathers rippled in what he now recognized as embarrassment. I was technically not supposed to be here. Mother wanted me to scout the Centaur sector, but I'd heard stories about humans, about their adaptability, their passion, their potential. She glanced at him sideways. I may have gone slightly off mission. Slightly? Talia called out as she dispatched another Droznid warrior. You disappeared for a month, then sent a report stating you found your mate and produced an egg with a species we'd barely contacted. The report was very thorough, Noria defended, her feathers puffing up. Oh yes, Talia agreed with a wicked grin. Especially the part about human stamina and creative problem-solving skills? Wayne nearly choked. You wrote a report about our night together? Standard protocol, Noria said primly, though her feathers were fully fluffed now. The Avari believe in detailed documentation of first contact situations? Very detailed. High Marshal Navaria's voice cut in dryly. Though I must say your father was quite impressed by the technical aspects. He's already designing modifications to our environmental suits based on your observations about human flexibility. Can we please focus on the invasion? Wayne pleaded, though he couldn't help but feel a mix of embarrassment and pride. At least his future father-in-law approved, even if it was for rather unexpected reasons. The next hour passed in a blur of combat and coordination. The Avari's arrival had completely changed the tide of battle. Their sophisticated technology and aerial combat skills complementing the humans' ground-based tactics perfectly. The Draznid forces, designed to overwhelm through brute force and cybernetic precision, couldn't adapt to the unpredictable combination. You know, Chesler commented during a brief lull, this is going to make one hell of a story for your kid. How did you meet Mom and Dad? Well, your mother broke into my tent one night, and a month later, she showed up with an egg while aliens were invading. Speaking of the egg, High Marshal Navaria interjected, I've had my personal guard secure it in the command vault. The protective field they've established should prevent any damage from the battle. Wayne felt a wave of relief followed by a sudden realization. Wait, you have guards watching our egg? Of course, Naira replied, as if it were obvious. It's the first human-Avari hybrid in history, not to mention my first grandchild. Did you think I wouldn't ensure its safety? The High Marshal has been planning for this possibility ever since my first report, Naira explained, taking down another Draznid warrior with elegant efficiency. Though I don't think even she expected it to happen quite so quickly. Your mother adapts well to surprises, Wayne observed. A necessary trait when dealing with Naira, Navaria commented, though I must admit she's outdone herself this time. A human mate, a viable egg, and now a full-scale battle with the Draznid. It's quite the courtship story. The last pockets of Draznid resistance were being eliminated. Their remaining ships fled into hyperspace as the adrenaline of battle began to fade. Wayne found himself watching Naira move through the aftermath, issuing orders and coordinating with both human and Avari forces. Her feathers caught the light of the setting sun, reminding him of that first night when she'd appeared in his tent like something from a dream. You're staring, she noted without turning around. Can you blame me? He replied. My life was relatively normal until you decided to captivate me and lay an egg. She turned to face him, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Disappointed? Not even slightly, he assured her, pulling her close. Though next time you decide to dramatically change my life, maybe give me a little warning. Where's the fun in that? She purred, her feathers brushing against him in a way that brought back very pleasant memories. Besides, I seem to recall you being quite appreciative of my surprise visit. If you two are quite finished, Talia interrupted, landing nearby with a knowing smirk. The High Marshal requests your presence in the command center? Something about discussing proper nest-building techniques and ceremonial requirements, Wayne groaned. We just fought off an invasion. Can't the wedding planning wait? Welcome to the family, Talia laughed. With the Avari, everything is a potential battle or celebration, sometimes both at once. As they made their way to the command center, Wayne reflected on how completely his life had changed in just 1 month. From a simple colony hunter to the mate of an alien scout, future son-in-law to a High Marshal, and father to what would likely be the most protected egg in human space. And it all started with one unexpected night. The aftermath of the Draznid invasion brought an unexpected challenge to New Eden Colony, accommodating several thousand enthusiastic Avari who were absolutely fascinated by the first human-Avari coupling in history. The colony's main square had been transformed into what Wayne could only describe as a scientific conference meets family reunion meets wedding planning committee. Your pheromone compatibility readings are absolutely fascinating, an Avari researcher chirped, waving some sort of scanner around Wayne's head. Your resonance patterns suggest an unprecedented level of biochemical synchronization? That's great, Wayne replied, trying not to flinch as another researcher plucked one of his beard hairs for analysis. Naira, looking particularly alluring in a new bodysuit that somehow incorporated both military practicality and traditional Avari formal wear, swooped in to rescue him. Ladies, perhaps we could continue the studies after the nest-binding ceremony? My mate needs to prepare. Of course! Of course! The researchers backed away, though their eyes still gleamed with scientific curiosity. One of them was actually taking notes on how Wayne walked. "Your people are very thorough," Wayne commented as Noria led him away. "You should see their research proposals," High Marshal Naveria said, descending from above with characteristic grace. "I've had to reject 17 different requests to study your sleeping patterns, though the one about comparing human and Avari courtship behaviors had merit." "Mother!" Noria's feathers fluffed in embarrassment. "What?" "It's perfectly natural to be curious about cross-species compatibility, especially given the impressive results." Naveria gestured toward the command center, where their egg was still under guard. "Speaking of which, the monitoring systems are detecting increased activity. The hatching could begin within days." Wayne felt his heart skip. "Days? I thought we had weeks." "Hybrid vigor," a passing researcher called out helpfully. "Wayson, the combination of human adaptability and Avari developmental rates is producing accelerated growth patterns." "Wonderful," Wayne muttered. "I'm going to be a father before I even learn all the proper Avari greeting protocols." "Oh, that reminds me." Naveria brightened. "The ceremonial coordinator needs to review the traditional plume display ritual with you. It's usually performed by flying, but we've modified it for ground-based participants." "The what ritual?" "It's a courtship dance," Noria explained, her feathers rippling with amusement. "Traditionally, the male demonstrates his worthiness through aerial acrobatics, but since you lack feathers, one of your many charming qualities, they're adapting it into a ground combat demonstration." "A combat?" Wayne perked up. "That I can do." "Excellent." Naveria clapped her hands. "The ceremonial combat gear is being fitted as we speak. The traditional outfit is quite minimal to better display physical." "Mother, please stop trying to get my mate to undress in public." "It's tradition," Naveria protested. "Besides, after that report you filed about your first encounter, I hardly think—" "Going to look," Wayne interrupted desperately. "Is that Chesler giving an unauthorized interview about the battle?" Indeed, the colonial defense officer was holding court with a group of entranced Avari researchers, dramatically reenacting scenes from the invasion. And then Wayne and Noria were fighting back-to-back like something out of those old Earth romance vids, Chesler was saying. "You could practically see the sparks flying between them, and I don't just mean from the weapons fire." "Chesler," Wayne called out, "don't you have patrol duties?" "Actually, I've been reassigned as cultural liaison." Chesler grinned. "Apparently, my unique perspective on human-Avari relations makes me valuable to the research teams." "Speaking of research," a new voice chimed in, and Wayne turned to see Talia approach with yet another group of scientists. "We've completed the preliminary nest design analyses. The hybrid architecture, incorporating both human living spaces and traditional Avari aerial features, is quite revolutionary." "Nest design?" Wayne asked weakly. "Of course." "Now for May." Naveria looked scandalized. "You don't expect my daughter and grandchild to live in a standard human dwelling. The nursery alone requires at least 3 different atmospheric levels for proper feather development." Wayne looked at Noria helplessly. She wrapped an arm around his waist, her feathers brushing his neck in a way that still sent shivers down his spine. "Don't worry," she murmured. "I'll help you navigate everything. Though I must admit, watching you try to learn our customs is endlessly entertaining." "Glad I can amuse you," he replied dryly, but couldn't help smiling as she pressed closer. "Oh!" one of the researchers suddenly exclaimed. "Their biochemical synchronization just spiked. Quick, get the resonance scanner." "Perhaps we should check on the egg," Wayne suggested hastily, leading Noria toward the command center before anyone could attach more monitoring devices to him. The command center had been transformed into a combination of high-security vault and luxury nursery. The egg rested in a specially designed incubation chamber, surrounded by monitoring equipment and no less than 6 elite Avari guards. "The shell patterns have shifted again," one of the guards reported professionally, though her eyes betrayed her excitement. "The integration of human and Avari genetic markers is creating unprecedented developmental sequences." Wayne approached the chamber, marveling at how the egg's surface seemed to ripple with iridescent patterns. "It's beautiful," he said softly. Noria pressed against his side, her feathers quivering with emotion. "Our child will be extraordinary. The strength of humanity combined with Avari grace, and hopefully not your mother's tendency to overshare," Wayne added under his breath. "I heard that." Nishriya's voice came through the comm system. "And speaking of sharing, the ceremonial coordinator has finished the modified ritual outfits." "Wayne, We'll need you for a fitting. The traditional male garments require some adaptation for human physiology? Do I want to know? Let's just say, Noria trilled with amusement, that my initial report on human anatomical differences has led to some interesting design choices. Before Wayne could process that concerning statement, one of the monitoring devices began to chime. The egg's surface rippled more intensely, and a small crack appeared. Already? Wayne breathed. The hybrid vigor hypothesis appears correct, a researcher said excitedly, practically bouncing in place. The combined genetic factors are accelerating development far beyond normal parameters. The crack widened slightly, then sealed itself. Practice contractions, another researcher explained. The shell is preparing for emergence. Fascinating. The molecular structure is incorporating both human tissue elasticity and avari protective properties. How long? Noria asked, her hand finding Wayne's. Days? Perhaps hours, the researcher replied. Though with this unprecedented hybrid situation, traditional timelines may not apply. Speaking of which. Hi, Marshall. About my proposal to study the parents' bonding behaviors during the hatching process. Not now, Naira said firmly, having descended from somewhere above. She approached the chamber with uncharacteristic solemnity. My grandchild is preparing to enter the universe. Everything else can wait. Even the nest-binding ceremony? Noria asked. Well, let's not be hasty, Naira replied. The ceremonial coordinator has put a lot of work into adapting the ritual combat demonstration and the formal plumage displays and the traditional mate-feeding ceremony. The what ceremony? Wayne asked. Oh, it's quite simple, Talia called from the doorway. The female demonstrates her ability to provide for her mate by presenting him with carefully selected delicacies traditionally. This involves aerial food-catching displays, but we've modified it for ground-based participation. Though Noria's initial method of proving her prowess was certainly unconventional, Naira added, with a meaningful look at her daughter. Noria's feathers fluffed up. Mother, please stop referring to that night. It was a perfectly legitimate courtship strategy. Of course it was, dear. Naira patted her daughter's shoulder. Very direct, very efficient, though perhaps a bit lacking in traditional protocol. The egg is perfectly healthy, isn't it? Noria demanded. And Wayne proved to be an ideal mate. Strong, adaptable, excellent genetic compatibility, and apparently quite skilled at nocturnal activities, Chesler added helpfully from somewhere in the growing crowd of observers. Wayne pinched the bridge of his nose. Can we please focus on the fact that our egg is showing signs of hatching? Oh, yes, Naira brightened. We should begin the traditional pre-hatching ceremonies immediately. The blessing of the shell, the dance of new feathers, the ritual of first flight. But the child will be part human, Wayne pointed out. We don't know if they'll even be able to fly. This statement caused an immediate stir among the researchers, who began furiously taking notes and arguing about genetic expression patterns. The wing structure visible through the shell suggests at least gliding capability, one called out excitedly, though the human influence might result in enhanced ground mobility as a trade-off. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private, Noria suggested, noting Wayne's overwhelmed expression, away from the entire scientific community. Excellent idea, Naira agreed. We can review the ceremony protocols in my private chamber. I've had it specially modified with both aerial and ground-level seating arrangements. And the ceremonial combat instructor is waiting to begin Wayne's training. As they left the command center, Wayne heard Chesler starting another story about their battle against the Dronid. This one seemed to involve a lot more romantic tension and dramatic poses than he remembered actually occurring. You know, he said to Noria as they walked, her feathers occasionally brushing against him in a way that still made his pulse quicken. When you appeared in my tent that night, I never imagined it would lead to all this. Disappointed? She asked, echoing their earlier conversation with a trill. Never, he replied, pulling her close. Though I do have one question. Yes? This ceremonial combat outfit, exactly how minimal are we talking now? Noria's answering laugh echoed through the corridor, followed by the sound of several researchers activating their recording devices. The ceremonial arena of New Eden Colony buzzed with excitement as hundreds of Avari and humans gathered for the nest-binding ceremony. Wayne stood at the center, wearing what the ceremonial coordinator had assured him was a modified traditional outfit, though he suspected the amount of skin on display had less to do with tradition and more to do with the enthusiastic research team's desire to study human physiology. "Stop fidgeting," Chesler whispered from his position as human cultural representative. "You face-down drowned warriors. This is just a wedding with aliens." While wearing something that would make a performer blush. "Thanks for the pep talk," Wayne muttered, adjusting the ceremonial sash that seemed to be the outfit's main concession to modesty. Above them, Avari performers executed intricate aerial maneuvers, their feathers creating patterns of light and shadow. High Marshal Naveria presided over the ceremony from an elevated platform, looking every inch the regal commander, despite her obvious excitement at gaining a human son-in-law. "The union of sky and ground," Noria's voice carried across the arena. "The merging of two species who found love in the vast expanse of space. Today we celebrate not just a binding of mates, but a new chapter in both our people's histories." Wayne's attention was suddenly drawn to Noria as she descended from above, her ceremonial attire somehow managing to be both elegant and provocative. Her feathers gleamed with iridescent patterns that matched the egg surface, a traditional detail that made his heart skip. "You clean up nice," he murmured as she landed beside him. "And you," she trilled softly, her eyes appreciatively taking in his ceremonial outfit. "Wear our traditional garments surprisingly well, though I prefer how you looked that first night." "Focus, children," Naveria called out, amusement clear in her voice. "We have protocols to follow now, Wayne. For the traditional display of prowess." A sharp chime cut through the arena, followed by an urgent message. "High Marshal, the egg is beginning." The carefully choreographed ceremony erupted into chaos. Researchers sprinted toward the command center, their instruments beeping frantically. Naveria looked torn between maintaining ceremonial dignity and rushing to see her grandchild hatch. "Well," Noria said brightly, "this is fitting. Our child already shows your tendency to ignore proper protocols." "My tendency?" Wayne laughed as they ran toward the command center, still in their ceremonial attire. "Who's the one who skipped all traditional courtship rituals in favor of a surprise nocturnal visit?" "It worked, didn't it?" They burst into the command center to find it packed with observers. The egg's surface was rippling continuously now, the shell's pattern shifting in hypnotic waves. "Remarkable," a researcher exclaimed. "The shell is incorporating both species' characteristics during the hatching process. The molecular structure is completely unprecedented." "Less studying, more helping," Wayne suggested as another crack appeared. "Actually," the researcher replied excitedly, "the hybrid nature of the egg means we should minimize interference. The shell's unique properties—" "Oh, do be quiet, Aniket," Naveria interrupted, landing next to them. "My grandchild is hatching. Science can wait." The crack widened, accompanied by a sound that was neither quite human nor quite Avari. Wayne and Noria moved closer, their hands finding each other automatically. "I see movement," someone called out. "The feather patterns are— Wait, are those fingers?" The shell split further, revealing their first glimpse of their child. Tiny hands with delicate fingers pushed against the shell, while soft down feathers in shades of gray and gold could be seen beneath. "The perfect blend," Noria breathed, her feathers quivering with emotion. "Just like his mother," Wayne replied softly. "His?" Naveria asked sharply. "You can tell already? Call it paternal intuition?" Wayne smiled just as another piece of shell fell away. The child that emerged was indeed a boy, with human-like skin covered in a fine layer of down feathers that matched Noria's color. His eyes, when they opened, were a striking combination of human and Avari features. "Hello, little warrior," Noria cooed, her usual confident demeanor melting into pure maternal joy. The baby looked at them with remarkable alertness, then made a sound that was somewhere between a human gurgle and an Avari trill. His tiny feathers puffed up as he reached for them. "The motor control is extraordinary for a newborn," a researcher noted frantically, taking readings. Hybrid vigor hypothesis. "Could you not scan my grandson for 5 minutes?" Naveria interrupted, though she was clearly fighting back tears of joy. "Lift his parents, hold him first." Wayne carefully lifted the child, marveling at how natural it felt despite the unique circumstances. "That kills." The baby immediately snuggled against him, tiny fingers gripping the ceremonial sash while soft feathers tickled his chest. "He's perfect," Noria said, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Though we never did discuss names." "Actually," Wayne said, I had an idea about that. In Earth's ancient cultures, there was a mythology about a creature called the phoenix, a magnificent bird that represented renewal and the joining of earth and sky. Phoenix? Noria tested the name, her accent giving it a musical quality. It's perfect! A strong name! Naveria approved. Though traditionally, Avari naming ceremonies involve complex aerial demonstrations. And mother, Noria interrupted gently. Perhaps we could adapt the traditions. And our family is something entirely new. As if in agreement, Phoenix trilled and extended tiny wing-like appendages that were neither quite arms nor quite wings, but something wonderfully in between. The researchers are going to have a field day with this, Chesler commented from the doorway. First human-Avari hybrid born during a nest-binding ceremony, already showing unique adaptations. Speaking of the ceremony, Naveria said hopefully, we could still complete the traditional rituals, the combat demonstration, the aerial displays. With all due respect, High Marshal, Wayne replied, unable to take his eyes off his son, I think Phoenix has demonstrated that sometimes the best traditions are the ones we make ourselves. Noria pressed closer, her feathers brushing against him in a way that still sent electricity through his body. Besides, she purred, I think our original approach to tradition worked out quite well. That reminds me, Chesler called out, should I tell the story of how you two met at the celebration feast? I've added some dramatic embellishments. No, Wayne and Noria shouted simultaneously, causing Phoenix to trill with laughter. Perhaps, Naveria suggested diplomatically, we could focus on creating new traditions. After all, this is just the beginning, the first human Avari family. There will be more to come, I'm sure. More grandchildren? Noria asked teasingly. Well, now that you mention it, Nairia's eyes sparkled. The traditional Avari family structure does typically involve multiple offspring, and given how successfully your bodies adapted to each other. Mother! Phoenix chose that moment to demonstrate another hybrid trait, somehow managing to float slightly above Wayne's arms before settling back down. Fascinating, a researcher exclaimed. The anti-gravity glands are already developing. This suggests... Out! Naveria commanded. Everyone out. Let the family have a moment alone. As the command center cleared, Wayne looked at his unlikely family. His alien mate with her beautiful feathers and warrior's grace. Their hybrid son who represented the best of both species. And yes, even his formidable mother-in-law who commanded a battle fleet. Having any regrets? Noria asked softly, echoing a question that had become something of a theme in their relationship. About letting a mysterious alien woman into my tent that night? Wayne pretended to consider. Well, it did lead to an invasion, a very revealing ceremonial outfit, and enough scientific interest to last several lifetimes. And? She prompted, her feathers brushing against him in that particular way that still made his heart race. And it was the best decision I never made, he said, pulling her close while their son trilled happily between them. Though next time you decide to seduce someone, maybe start with, Hello! Where's the fun in that? Noria laughed, her eyes sparkling with the same mischief that had first captivated him. Besides, I seem to recall you didn't have any complaints about my method of introduction, did you? Phoenix chose that moment to float up again, his tiny feathers glowing with joy as he discovered his abilities. As they watched their son explore his unique heritage, Wayne couldn't help but marvel at how one unexpected night had led to something so extraordinary. You know what? He said, wrapping an arm around Noria while their son practiced his newfound anti-gravity skills. I can't wait to see what other traditions we break together. That, Noria purred, sounds like a challenge. Above them, Phoenix trilled in agreement, his human eyes sparkling with Avari mischief as he floated in the space between earth and sky. A perfect illustration of the bridges that could be built when love ignored the boundaries of species in space. And somewhere in the colony, Chesler was undoubtedly already planning how to tell this story at the next diplomatic gathering, while Naveria probably had plans for at least 3 more traditional ceremonies, and the researchers were definitely preparing new grant proposals. But for now, in this moment, it was just them, the hunter who had found more than game that fateful night, the alien scout who had chosen to break protocol in the most spectacular way, and their impossible, wonderful child who represented everything that could happen when you opened your heart to the unexpected. After all, The best stories often begin with one surprising night.